All right, let's jump into it. This is my review of the new AGM Evolver LRF 1280. Right out of the gates, as you can tell, you heard all those words correct. Laser rangefinder, 1280 resolution. This thing is incredible. It's awesome. It's crystal clear. It is literally all the things. It is all that. It literally is. It's got everything I could ever want from a thermal optic. So let's talk about it, shall we? Obviously, I like it because, it's got all the things I want. I'm going to try to do less of an infomercial and more of an actual review of my experience with it, how I like it, things I don't like about it, all that. So, real quick, couple quick changes about it. Obviously, it's got the LRF. The focus knob is up here, which is actually a lot easier to twist than the traditional lens style I'm used to. That took quite a bit of getting used to for me because I would actually over dial and overthrow my focus and have to dial it back a little. And so based on that, that was a learning curve for me, but that's okay. I got there. Learning to use the laser rangefinder was a bit of a learning curve as well. I will say out of the gates, there's something I don't like about the LRF, and it's where the bracket box is, the box that you actually hold over what you're trying to range. It is way up the reticle for me, and that is less than ideal. And so based on that, I've had to learn how to get used to using the LRF. For me, it's I dip it down, hit the button, get a range on it, lift it back up, and that's that. I don't have it on continuous range find mode because like I said, it's way up my reticle. So I ranged a dog. It ranged it at 280 yards. I lifted up and the coyote was moving a little bit. So I'm waiting for it to stop. By the time it stopped, this had ranged something in the background, up my reticle. And so all of a sudden it's giving me a range of 800 yards and giving me a drop way down the reticle. So I don't love that, but it is what it is. Based on that, though, let's talk about the efficiency of the LRF. I do have all my ballistic information. I have a Garmin Zero. Everybody should these days. They're incredible. And so out of the gates, I entered my information for, this is a 6-arc for my 58 grain VMAX hand loads, and tested it. First time out zeroing it, I zeroed it at 100 yards, entered all my ballistic information, and then I set up a hot 6-inch steel target at 400 yards. I ranged it. It ranges it, 397 yards. Gives me my little X for my holdover. I hold on that, pull the trigger, pew, ting, impact. So to get an impact at 400 yards, first round with a thermal scope for me was incredible. It was awesome. It was so cool. So based on that, I'm going to go ahead and say, based on my experience with the LRF and the amount of times I've gotten out with it, it is accurate. It does its job. It works really well. The ballistic calculator works well enough. And so I've been able to hit some of those further shots using that little X that it gives me. So that's pretty cool. So I guess I didn't mention. Should I mention? I've been out with it already a handful of times. So I have been out more than once with it, obviously. And so I do feel confident already in giving an opinion about how I like it and dislike it. I can't give an opinion yet on durability and ruggedness, but at the same time, if you look real close, it looks like it's the same body as the Rattler V2 and the Clarion. And so, I can speak pretty clearly to the fact that those have both been incredibly rugged and durable for me so far. So I have full confidence in this thing. The other thing is you'll notice this part of the lens right here, I'm pretty sure it's aluminum, as well as this is a small feature and it brings me so much joy. It's small. It doesn't affect the scope's ability to do its job, but it's one of those details that I'm just a big fan of. This lens cap, you see that? Just flings open and locks open like that. That's incredible. The other thing about it is that the lens cap itself is aluminum as well. Aluminum, for those of us Americans. I just like to pronounce it that way. The lens cap is fully aluminum. And so I've broken 2 of the AGM lens caps so far. But this one being aluminum, I'm confident that I'm never going to have any issues with it. And as you can see, as I sit here and play with it, it flings open and then it locks into position, and then it's just a little bit of friction to defeat to close it again, and then it magnetically stays closed. That is so cool. It is something so small, and like I said, doesn't affect the scope's ability to do its job, but it's one of those features I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I'm actually really happy I have that. So that's cool. Anyway, aside from that, it's got all the same reticle options as the Clarion and the Rattler V2. It's got the same cool battery that's a proprietary battery that's captured that lasts long. I will say, being a 1280 and an LRF, this thing does chew up batteries. Not chew up physically, but like it will burn through batteries. Full charge probably gives me 75% of the time on this as it did on the Clarion. So that is something to keep in mind. But since it runs those same batteries, it does give me, I can get through a full night with 2 batteries. And I mean a full night. I mean from like 8 p.m. to like 6 or 7 a.m. I can get that all done on 2 batteries. I've used this scope in Wyoming down to below 0 degrees in 20 to 30 mile per hour winds. I've used it in Utah down into the teens in the middle of snow and I don't know what to call it, but when it's snowing but a little warm, so it's not quite snow, it's like wet snow, it's slush snow coming out of the sky. I've used it in those conditions. I've used it in all the cold weather conditions that you could, and it's been great so far. I haven't noticed any impacts on service or degradation of service. What I will say, though, is one thing I have noticed is in the middle of big snowstorms, I'm in my scanner. I had 2 different nights, one where I used a 380 scanner and one where I used a 640 scanner. Depending on which one I'm using, my the thermal conditions, my ability to see clearly is affected by that. And so the 1280, I jump on and I look out the window. I go from the scanner or whatever to like look at an area just to see if like, hey, should we stop and make a stand? And the first time I did that, I was like, oh my gosh, wow. The clarity of this thing is in a league of its own compared to the 380 and 640 counterparts. So I will just say, if you're stepping it up from either of those to one of these, you will notice that its performance is just, that elevated level, making it a really cool option. So yeah, that's the AGM Evolver. I've been a big fan of it so far. Obviously, the LRF ballistic calculator, the 1280 sensor. It's literally got all the things. 75 millimeter lens. It's literally got all the things that I want and need, and none of the things I don't need. Another thing that I've learned recently, hunting with a couple buddies that have scopes from some of the competitors of AGM. I won't name names, but none of their automatic auto record, recoil induced, whatever you want to call it, auto record functionalities, none of theirs performs as well as the AGM. I have never once not had it record when I've shot at something. Meanwhile, I was out with buddies with 2 different scopes that both of them throughout the night were saying, dang it, my auto record didn't work, so I didn't get a video of that one. So I'm a huge fan of that. The auto record is an incredible feature. I've said it in reviews before, but AGM's auto record just can't be beat. It really can't. Only other cons I can really think of is that it's a humongous chungus. It's a big old, this thing's massive. It's a big scope. It's obviously pretty big, but you pretty much have to have that to get that 75 millimeter lens, the 1280, the LRF. All of these features are things that take up space. So that's pretty much not something that you can have any control over. So in my mind, it's worth the trade-off, though, going to this bigger optic to get those performance differences. So yeah. It's been an incredible scope. The LRF has worked well. The ballistic calculators worked well. The resolution, the clarity, all of that has been phenomenal. It has performed exactly how you would expect a scope with that feature set to perform. Plus, it's got a few small little bonuses like the cool lens cap that I really do love. The focus knob being easier to turn. I do appreciate that for when I'm wearing gloves. I like the buttons. They're easier to find than my old scopes buttons, and so I'm able to actuate those. I even use mittens, and I'm able to hit those buttons with mittens, so that's cool. So yeah, So far, my experience with the Evolver LRF 1280 has been a good one. This was a lot of me talking, a lot of word salad, but you know, all that to say, if you have the cash to spend and you currently hunt with or have a 380 or 640 model, you got the money to spend, I don't think you can beat this scope within the same spec range for with any of the other options, and they all cost more. So, in my opinion, I don't see why you wouldn't buy this. All right, check this out, homies. Yes, the frame rate will cause it to flicker. That's not a problem with either item. That's just how technology works. Sleep it, stand it up, not asleep. Lay it down, asleep. Stand it up, awake. Lay it down, asleep. Kind of cool. Now, check this out. Stand it up, sleep it. It's obviously asleep. Grab it and give it a shake. Uh-oh, I didn't get it good enough. And back on. So, there you go. I'm not sure exactly how they made that work. Obviously, I guess I forgot to mention in the main review, you can actually turn on a setting where it shows how canted you are, which is pretty cool. I ended up turning it off to save on battery, but I may or may not turn it back on. Anyway, scope asleep, scope awake. Rad.